Shaq.
Recording in progress.
Well, good evening, everyone. It is 7 o'clock. We'll call to order this meeting of Whitehall City Council on January the 17th, 2023. If you would, please join me in a moment of silence, followed by the Pledge of Allegiance. Thank you.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Ms. Fogg, would you please call the roll?
Cantor. Present. Peck.
Present.
Smith.
Present.
Bailey.
Present.
Dixon.
Present.
Elmore. Present. Coniston.
Present.
President Potter.
Mr. President, Pro Tem, I'd like to make a motion to excuse the absent member, please.
Second.
I have a motion by Cantor, a second by Coniston to excuse the absent member. Ms. Fogg, would you please call the roll?
Cantor.
Yes.
Peck.
Yes.
Smith.
Yes.
Bailey.
Yes.
Dixon.
Yes.
Elmore. Yes. Coniston.
Yes.
Now we need a motion to approve the minutes from January 3rd, 2023 agenda and regular meeting minutes, the January 9th, 2023 Park and Recreation Committee and agenda and meeting minutes, the January 10th, 2023 agenda and special meeting minutes.
Mr. President Pro Tem, I'd like to make a motion to approve the minutes.
Second?
I have a motion by Coniston, a second by Cantor to approve the minutes. Ms. Fogg, would you please call the roll?
Cantor.
Yes.
Peck.
Yes.
Smith.
Yes.
Bailey.
Yes.
Dixon.
Yes.
Elmore. Yes. Coniston.
Yes.
The minutes have been approved. Ms. Fogg, would you please call the roll on whether each member of council was given a copy of each item of legislation listed on the agenda prior to our meeting, including any add-on legislation?
Cantor.
Yes.
Peck.
Yes.
Smith.
Yes.
Bailey.
Yes.
Dixon.
Yes.
Elmore. Yes. Coniston.
Yes.
So for those of you following along, we are out of order. We're going to move to some resolutions and get those passed. First up, we have Resolution 2, 2023, recognizing Laura Jones as the 2022 Administrative / Support Employee of the Year and awarding her a one-time payment of $350 as an additional compensation and declaring an emergency.
President Pro Tem, I make a motion that, for Resolution 2, 2023, suspension of all rules.
Second.
I have a motion by Elmore, a second by Heck to introduce and suspend the rules on Resolution 2, 2023. Is there any discussion? Ms. Fogg, would you please call the roll?
Cantor.
Yes.
Peck.
Yes.
Smith.
Yes.
Bailey.
Yes.
Dixon.
Yes.
Elmore.
Yes.
Coniston.
Yes.
Thank you. The rules have been suspended.
President Pro Tem, move to adopt.
Second.
I have a motion by Elmore, a second by Heck to adopt Resolution 2, 2023. Ms. Fogg, would you please call the roll?
Cantor.
Yes.
Peck.
Yes.
Smith.
Yes.
Bailey.
Yes.
Dixon.
Yes.
Elmore.
Yes.
Coniston.
Yes.
Resolution 2, 2023 has been adopted. Next is Resolution 3, 2023.
Mr. President, if we could, we'll go ahead and have Laura Jones come up here.
Sure, we can do that.
Administrative and support. So I'll read a little bit. I'm not going to read the entire resolution because I don't want to, and there's a lot of people here. Recognizing Laura Jones as the 2022 Administrative Support Employee of the Year and awarding her a one-time payment of $350 as additional compensation. It is the desire of this council to annually recognize and honor city employees who have performed their duties faithfully and in a consistent, persistent, and outstanding manner. as a complicated software transition the department was going through, and is the department's cheerleader, always recognizing special days for the staff in her department in addition to her duties as a permit specialist. So what I want to do is, I can tell you a lot of things about Laura, how she makes everyone's day brighter each and every morning, but I thought I would read a message from one of her coworkers about her who couldn't be here. Laura is upbeat, willing to make the extra effort to help citizens, contractors, and teammates. She is generous, caring, supportive, intelligent, organized, and always great with everyone and greets them with a smile. I enjoy working with her, I love her humor, and she laughs at my dad jokes. She's a keeper. Laura, congratulations.
Congratulations, Laura. Brings us to Resolution 3, 2023. It's recognizing Austin Hines as the 2022 Labor/Service Employee of the Year and awarding him a one-time payment of $350 as additional compensation and declaring an emergency.
Mr. President Pro Tem, I'd like to introduce Resolution 3, 2023, and move its suspension of all rules.
Second.
I have a motion to introduce Resolution 3, 2023 by Coniston, a second by Dixon, and to suspend the rules. Is there any discussion? Ms. Aug, would you please call the roll?
Cantor,
Yes.
Heck,
Yes.
Smith,
Yes.
Bailey,
Yes.
Dixon,
Yes.
Elmore,
Yes.
Coniston.
Yes.
The rules have been suspended on Resolution 323.
President Pro Tem, I'd like to move to adopt.
Second.
I have a motion by Coniston and a second by Dixon to adopt Resolution 3, 2023. Ms. Aug, would you please call the roll?
Cantor,
Yes.
Heck,
Yes.
Smith,
Yes.
Bailey,
Yes.
Dixon,
Yes.
Elmore,
Yes.
Coniston.
Yes.
Resolution 3, 2023 has been adopted.
Okay, Mr. President, I'll have Austin come up. So this is, Austin, I should have done this with you, Laura, so if you want to stand up and introduce anybody that you have with you.
Yeah.
Austin, do you want to introduce anybody with you today?
No, wait, Heather's over there, my two daughters, Aubrey and Ella are over there, my mom, Susan.
Excellent, so I'll, again, just read part of this. Recognizing Austin Hines as the 2022 Labor and Service Employee of the Year and awarding him a one-time payment in the amount of $350 as additional compensation. Whereas it is the desire of this council to annually recognize and honor city employees who have performed their duties faithfully and in a consistent, persistent, and outstanding manner. Austin Hines is a quick learner and is a source of information for newer employees within his department, and was recently promoted to service crew chief based on his skills and performance within the department. One of the things that I want to mention, Austin has been with us less than 2 years, and I think all of us in leadership, there come times where you interview new employees and you know from that moment that they are the exact candidate and person that you're looking for, not only to do the job, but to help strengthen the culture that you have, that we all work on every day. And Austin is our culture warrior. He has quickly established himself as a leader in the department, and I think that's proof that in a department that has a lot of senior guys in it, that he was promoted to crew chief within 2 years. So Austin, again, on behalf of the city, congratulations.
Thank you.
Congratulations, Austin.
Yes.
Brings us to Resolution 4, 2023. It's recognizing Mark Showalter as the 2022 Police Officer of the Year and awarding him a one-time payment of $350 as additional compensation and declaring an emergency.
President Pro Tem, I'd like to introduce Resolution 4, 2023, and move for suspension of all rules.
Second.
I have a motion by Elmore, a second by Heck to introduce and suspend the rules on Resolution 4, 2023. Ms. Aug, would you please call the roll?
Cantor,
Yes.
Heck,
Yes.
Smith,
Yes.
Bailey,
Yes.
Dixon,
Yes.
Elmore,
Yes.
Yes.
Coniston.
Rules have been suspended on Resolution 4, 2023.
Move to adopt.
Second.
I have a motion by Elmore, a second by Heck to adopt Resolution 4, 2023. Mrs. Aug, would you please call the roll?
Cantor,
Yes.
Heck,
Yes.
Smith,
Yes.
Bailey,
Yes.
Dixon,
Yes.
Elmore,
Yes.
Coniston.
Yes.
Resolution 4, 2023 has been adopted. Chief?
President, I think I got the right one. I'd asked Mark Showalter to come up and introduce his family, but he told me he was going to introduce Captain Short as his father. I said, you're not going to do this. Resolution number 004-2023, recognizing Mark Showalter as the 2022 Police Officer Employee of the Year and awarding him a one-time payment of $350 as additional compensation to declare an emergency. Whereas it is the desire of the council to annually recognize and honor city employees who perform their duties faithfully in a consistent, persistent, and outstanding manner. And whereas Mark Showalter serves as a school resource officer for the police department and represented the first shift for the platoon officer of the year. In 2022, he designed and implemented a juvenile diversion program unique to Central Ohio and also created a student police academy that introduces students to law enforcement and concepts of service before self. One of the things I'd like to say real quick about Mark is we're always talking about doing this excellence in policing thing, and we're always mentioning the youth in the community, and they deserve us to give them things that they need and the things that they desire to help them be successful in life. Now, we say that, and then Mark's the real deal. And Mark's been doing this for years. He don't just do it at school. They've all got a cell phone. Like parents will call him. I'm having trouble getting Johnny to school, or I'm having trouble with these. Even moms and dads will call, and Mark will do stuff on his own time, outside. That's things that we don't even know about that he's doing. Not to mention he's also rehabilitates broken horses, I think. So he's a very, very busy man. He's very dedicated and well deserving of this employee of the year award voted on by the entire department. Congratulations. Congratulations, Mark.
Congratulations.
Good job.
Thank you for your service as well.
Very much so.
Resolution 005-2023 is recognizing Sean Stoffer as the 2022 firefighter / paramedic employee of the year and awarding him a one-time payment of $350 as additional compensation and declaring an emergency.
President Pro Tem, I'd like to introduce Resolution 5, 2023, and move for the suspension of all rules.
Second.
I have a motion by Elmore, a second by Dixon to introduce Resolution 5, 2023 and suspend the rules. Mrs. Aug, would you please call the roll?
Cantor,
Yes.
Heck,
Yes.
Smith,
Yes.
Bailey,
Yes.
Dixon,
Yes.
Elmore,
Yes.
Coniston.
Yes.
The rules have been suspended on Resolution 5, 2023.
President Pro Tem, move to adopt.
Second.
I have a motion by Elmore, a second by Dixon to adopt Resolution 5, 2023. Ms. Aug, would you please call the roll?
Cantor,
Yes.
Heck,
Yes.
Smith,
Yes.
Bailey,
Yes.
Dixon,
Yes.
Elmore,
Yes.
Coniston.
Yes.
Resolution 5, 2023 has been adopted.
You're on.
Thanks for having us all here tonight. Before we bring Sean up, I wanted to read a little bit about how we got to our process. The Division of Fire accept nominations during each quarter of the year to bestow an internal award defined as firefighter of the quarter. The nominations are held against a high standard of review by a committee of personnel and awarded to an employee who exhibits performance above and beyond the normal expectations of duty. At the end of the year, each firefighter of the quarter is listed on a ballot for the entire division to vote on, and one of them is firefighter of the year. This was the division's first year organizing such an effort, and we're proud to announce the following. Firefighter Andrew Morales was firefighter of the first quarter. Dan Horn was firefighter of the quarter number 2. Doug Nybarger was awarded firefighter of the third quarter, and firefighter Sean Stauffer was awarded firefighter of the fourth quarter and was elected Whitehall Divisions of Fire's 2022 Firefighter of the Year. So a couple things about Sean. Sean started as a Whitehall firefighter on January 10, 2022. He was hired from Plain Township, where he worked for 19 years at New Albany. Sean brought a high level of professionalism and a commitment to compassion along with him to serve the citizens of Whitehall. He has a caring attitude, a selfless demeanor, and attention to details never ending. He entices all around him to rise to a higher level. Sean's a strong advocate of positive mental health care and physical fitness. He's contributed to the environment of continual learning and professional growth, constantly working to make himself better and sharing his knowledge with others. Sean came to Whitehall with the experience of a senior firefighter while exhibiting the passion of a rookie. Sean is never too busy to help another person in need and finds time to take care of the little things without being asked. All of these traits, his operational prowess, his love for the job, and his fantastic mustache, has earned him the respect among his peers and awarded 2022 Firefighter of the Year. He was also most recently awarded a Distinguished Service Cross as a result of his actions assisting another firefighter with mental health struggles. So Sean, if you'll come up.
Happy anniversary.
Wait, pay attention.
Whereas Sean Stauffer has gone above and beyond his normal assigned duties, Sean started with Whitehall on January 22 as a lateral transfer with 19 years. Sean brought a high level of professionalism and commitment to passion with him. He has a caring attitude, selfless demeanor, and attention to detail, and is never ending enticing those around him to rise to his level. He's a strong advocate of positive mental health care and physical fitness. In 2022, he received a Distinguished Service Cross as a result of assisting another firefighter with mental health struggles, and was awarded the 2022 Firefighter of the fourth quarter within the department. Sean Stauffer exceeds expectations as a response to the city's customers, and is now therefore be it resolved. The Council of City of Whitehall does hereby recognize and honor Sean Stauffer as 2022 Firefighter Employee of the Year, and by his presence expresses its appreciation to him for dependable and dedicated service.
Yeah, my wife was saying, my wife and Marissa, and my 3 kids, Madeline and Kendall.
Congratulations,
Thank you.
Sean.
Thanks, Sean.
Thank you. That brings us to our next presentation, and it is the 2022 Community Attitude Survey results, and I will introduce our Deputy Director of Public Affairs, Megan Meyer. And I think you have a guest with you.
Mr. President Pro Temp, I would just mention that not everyone needs to stay for the rest of the meeting. You're more than welcome to, but if you don't work for the service department, you're more than welcome to. She's still there. Yeah, they really respect my overtime.
Sean.
Thank you.
That's nice you let your son go before you, you know? That's all right. Good man, good man. Yeah. Congratulations.
Congratulations.
Nope, just the four.
Oh, you're so pretty.
What's the color? Oh, she's back. There you go.
Oh, Laura decided to stay.
Oh.
That's great.
All right, I think it's gonna stay like that, so that's all right. President Pro Tem Bailey, members of council, thank you. We tonight have finally the results for you of the 2022 Community Attitude Survey. I'm not gonna speak too much about it because we're really gonna go in depth here, both with the methodology and some of the findings to share with you. As a point of housekeeping for everybody at home, of course, just like always, we'll put this on the city's website tomorrow, and you'll see it featured in the e-update and on social media as well. So if you'd like to get nerdy like I do and dive deeper into the data, that information will be available online. So without further ado, I'm going to go ahead and invite up our guest this evening, Marty Saperstein with Saperstein Associates, the polling firm that conducted this and our most recent 4 biennial community attitude survey. And he's going to dive into the purpose of this survey and the methodology.
Hi, Mark.
So I am aspiring to be your research guy of the year. For those of you who don't know me, my name is Marty Saperstein. I'm president of Saperstein Associates, a company I founded 43 years and 17 days ago. And that aside, we do research of all different kinds of companies all over the country, but locally we do community attitude surveys, starting at the top of the city, Dublin and Powell and New Albany and Grove City and of course Whitehall. And you may not remember this, but 2 years ago, it was a year we did New Albany and Whitehall and Powell and Dublin, and we asked the same questions about the pandemic and diversity in those 3 surveys. And for the first time, we got permission to put those data together to make comparisons. If you haven't seen that, it's just really fascinating to see how the demographics differ and how the attitudes that folks have in these very different communities differ. And I think you'd be pleased with the results. But that is introduction.
Sorry, just 1 second, folks.
Overheating.
Hold, please.
That pond looks like it splashes to the left.
Just when it's windy. Hey, Michael, can you shut the door? Yeah.
I'm not sure we need to use the paper, actually. It's not talking to that correctly.
All righty. So in the absence of technology, paper sometimes happens.
We'll catch it on the website.
I want to read you the statement that I include as the first slide, which indicates what the purpose of the study is. So I think that this research gives residents of Whitehall a voice. It allows the public to express opinions on myriad issues, and in doing so, provides city leadership, you, objective data as planning for the future continues. Why do I include the word objective in that sentence? It's because I gotta believe that you get email, someone stops you in a grocery store, and what's the pleasant phrase? Bend your ear about some issue or not, and it is easy to be seduced by anecdotes, because they're persuasive. What I hope these data provide you is a reliable baseline against which to think about what the anecdotes tell you. A little bit about the methodology. See, I was stalling.
You did a great job. I'm gonna click through them for you because it won't let me go to the center mode. Does that make
Oh, okay.
sense?
So, a little bit about the method. So this is the fourth survey in a biennial series every 2 years. Last one was in 20. But unlike our earlier studies, the current study required 2 methods of data collection. So specifically, we interviewed 277 residents of Whitehall by telephone, and that comprised 2/3 of the sample. And then another 152 residents completed online questionnaires for a total of 429. And our typical survey, the last several, were all 350 respondents. Why did we adopt a different methodology? Normally, you want to keep the same method to make comparisons uniform. The problem is the world has changed in my industry. It is increasingly difficult to get people to answer the phone. Now, the easy answer is to say, well, let's just do an online survey. The problem with online surveys is there's no equivalent to a phone book like there used to be. So now you're at the mercy of folks who are gathering emails. So for this survey, we have a split between online and telephone. And to give you some sense of what happens with the telephone poll, in 2016, we needed to have 15 telephone numbers to complete an interview, 15. And then 2 years later, we need 25 telephone numbers. And then 2 years later, 2 years ago, we needed 35 numbers to complete an interview. And last year, we needed 50 numbers. And so what does that mean in practical terms? It means it takes much longer to do because you're constantly dialing. And it also means it's much more expensive because there are humans dialing numbers and not getting an interview for the first 49 calls. So the world has changed. And let me just tell you this. Different methods yield different results to some extent. And as you see the rest of the report, what you'll notice is that folks who responded online, as opposed to on the phone, tend to be more negative than folks on a phone. Why? Well, there's a niceness bias. When you're talking to a human, it's more difficult to be rude. When you're at home on your computer, it's easier. So you have more negativity. But the other thing that happens is that in a telephone survey, the no response, like yes, no, don't know, the don't know response is implicit. It's not stated. If someone says, I don't know, it gets recorded that way, but it's not stated. In an online survey, that option is present. Why? Because you need something to click to move to the next question. So what's interesting is that the don't know pool grows larger at the expense of the somewhat positive category. The very positive stay, the negative stay, the somewhat positive category is the nice category. Yeah, it's okay. But with the don't know option present, some portion of those people drop down to go no. So one thing, oh, you're not going to be able to see the chart. Just so on the details, so the interviews were conducted between the 10th of September and the 5th of October. They averaged 21 minutes in length. The online portion and the telephone portion and the online portion were 18 minutes in length and ran from September 9th to October 6th. For a sample the size we have, give or take, is no greater than plus or minus 4.7 percentage points. And the slide that you can't see clearly here, but this is the weighted data. So the first column of numbers is the actual data, and then the second column is the weighted data, and it's the weighted data that we use to compute all of the slides. So it's not perfect, but close enough to compare to what we did 2 years ago. The other thing you'll notice on this slide is that, so the sample split phone to online 2/3 to 1/3, but you'll notice as you go down, so women were more likely to answer the phone more than expected. Expected would be 65%, and then were more likely to answer online. And you can see there are differences of who responds by demographics. And all of that difference gets weighted out once the data are collected. Ready?
Yes, absolutely. All right, so with that method in mind and that main change that we saw from doing the phone call only to the hybrid model of the phone call versus online, you'll see a couple call outs for maybe where there were some variations in the way people responded over the phone and online. I tried to show you those where they were kind of stark. And so you'll see that here. But I'm just going to dive through this. This was divided into a couple sections. A lot of these will seem familiar to you, and I'll try to point out any question that was new, because then obviously it's hard to compare that to prior years. Some of the value of continuing our partnership with Saperstein Associates is that you do get to build up that longitudinal data, and what that does is show us trends. Obviously, we've complicated that by introducing the online surveys. It's a little bit harder to compare now. I think Marty and I would both advocate for moving forward, us using this as a new baseline year, and then trying to make a trend moving forward. But anyway, with all of that in mind, and I'm happy to explain that again if that didn't make sense. With all that in mind, we'll just jump right into the data. So kind of that overarching question, and you'll hear this asked in almost every community attitude survey as a place to live. What do you think of the community? And so this year we saw that about 40%, 4 out of 10 people said that Whitehall is either an excellent or above average place to live. Without any context, what you wouldn't know is that just 2 years ago, that was actually 3 out of 10 residents. So if you're looking for that trend line, we're getting better and better feedback that Whitehall is becoming an even better and better place to live. And you can see the call out there. This is one of those indications that Marty added for us of how did the differences look online versus over the phone. And so that excellent or above average group was that 47%, so very healthy, actually a little bit higher than the overall average here. And then it got drawn down, drawn down by 26% of people online indicated that they thought that that was the case. Something that is truly a value of working with Marty is the ability for him and his team to dive deeper into the data and to break it apart for us into these various categories and to tell us of our residents who thinks that we're doing the best and who thinks that we have quite a bit of room for improvement. It looks like some of the values are getting messed up here, so I'm trying my best to kind of fill some of the things in for you. But essentially, it's fairly even across a lot of indicators. Except that you see that the highest satisfaction group is actually that 55+ group, and then that no kid and that own group. And some of that makes sense. I think it's harder to have buy-in in a transient situation. If you're renting, perhaps you're moving around more, perhaps not. So none of that differs too starkly from what we would expect. Moving on to kind of another one of those 50,000-foot view categories of questions is that do you think we're heading in the right direction, right? That's about as basic and high level as it gets. This is one that kind of took a very interesting turn because of the introduction of online data. So as Marty was indicating, online you get the don't know. So this shows you those results with that don't know category out. So it's of just those with an opinion. And so across the board, you're seeing we're fairly in line with what it was in past years. There is a drop from 2020, that 87 to the 80%. But still overall, you've got that 4 out of 10 residents thinking that we're in fact on the right track. All right, so another portion of the survey that is a repeat from past surveys, something that we'd really like to benchmark against is how are we doing overall, but then what are your priorities? What should we really be doing in the next few years as leadership and as staff members? So these, again, they don't vary too starkly. If you're looking, and I know it's kind of hard to read here, guys, so I am sorry about that. On the right-hand column, that plus or minus, that's the percentage point that it increased or decreases compared to the 2020 survey, right? So reducing crime and drugs, that's up about 4 percentage points. When I say that, also take that with a grain of salt because as Marty discussed, the margin of error is 4.7 plus or minus, and so something around 3 to 4% changing up or down may not actually indicate a trend. It could just be the way that the sample was collected. You should look for something a little bit larger for that to think, hey, what happened there? Now, that doesn't mean it's not necessarily significant, but something to take and keep in mind. I think what's stark about that, and I wish I had written it down on my piece of paper, if you were to compare this to the 2016 Community Attitude Survey that we did with Marty, that onset one that we did, it was closer to 46%. I think that is the most important thing. So, and you know, if you're looking back on what's been done with the Safer Whitehall initiative and all of that, I think you can reliably infer that there is evidence that what Chief Christen is doing is helping to make people think, hey, we can focus on something else now. And so I think that is significant. Moving down the line, you can see a lot of this is falling within the margin of error from the 2020 survey, but kind of the big hitters, things that we are already focusing on. So reducing crime and drugs, services, housing, economy, amenities. Schools, interestingly enough, did drop 8 percentage points, and that could be attributable to the fact that Superintendent Wells is making a positive impact, so perhaps people are thinking that something else could be more of a priority. Those are just inferences. Focusing more on crime and safety, so this is another section, and these questions we really have kept very similar to try to make sure that we're getting those trend lines. So 3 out of 10 feel very safe in Whitehall. Again, what's important here is to look at it overall. So from 2020, we are about the same, 85% versus 2020, 84%, up from 79% in 2016. And so you do see that some of that is really going up. And again, it does show up here. I wasn't sure with the inability to put up the PowerPoint itself, but about 1 in 5 residents is aware of the Safer Whitehall initiative. And so that's up slightly from what we saw in 2020. I bet you anything part of that is up because of the Safer Whitehall levy and people kind of thinking more about safety in Whitehall. Okay, so this is, I think, a really interesting trend line, and the next one will show you two, the people that answered this and their demographics. So have you been a victim of crime in Whitehall? And again, I'm sorry the values disappeared here. In 2016, it was 39%, 2018, 41%, 2020, 36%, and then this survey around 31%. So we are seeing that gradual decline. So I think that you can obviously tell there's room for improvement. We would certainly hope that that continues to decrease, but it is on the right track. I think evidence of that is when you break it down by these various demographics and you're actually looking at this. People who have lived here the longest have been most likely to be a victim of crime. Well, that might make sense. If we were on the wrong track 10 years ago, 20 years ago, and you lived here and crime was more prevalent, then it would make sense that you would report being a victim of crime. Something that we do hope to do with this question in the future is ask, and when did that occur? Just to try to get that data of, well, was it really in the last 5 years, in the last 2 years since the last survey, or was it something that you're thinking about from 20, 30 years ago since you've been a long-time resident? Okay, so breaking it down further, again, really diving into the crime and safety portion of things. What was that type of crime? And so again, you're not seeing anything vary too much in the right-hand column in terms of percentage points from the 2020 survey. So mostly theft being the number one crime, and that's in line with the data that we have from the Division of Police. All right, city services. So we kind of got what I started with, this big 50,000-foot view questions, right? And now we're breaking it down into what specifically were we up to in the last couple of years and what was each department kind of managing. Fire and EMS and police services, surprise, surprise, they tend to be pretty beloved in the community, and these are really good marks for any community, and I think really great marks for us as well. You did see fire and EMS have a slight increase. That plus 5% is just outside of that margin of error. Police services held strong, exactly the same as the 2020 survey. Something that Marty and I were discussing, when you get data like this year over and, and even in biennial surveys every 2 years, it kind of brings validity to the results. You sampled 437 different residents in the 350 that you did from your prior survey, and you got the same sample, the same data. That's a pretty valid survey. So something to keep in mind there. Recycling collection, we had not previously asked about that, but obviously since implementing the new cart and cart contents only program, we're starting, and so moving forward, we'll see that trend line. I'm sure you've all jumped ahead to the bottom, to garbage collection, and so we did see a negative, a decrease in satisfaction there, rather, I guess is a better way to say that. So we did see from 2020 to 2022 a decrease of satisfaction of that 12 percentage points. I think we all know that we just went through an absolutely major change with the way that we collect garbage. If you're breaking down this data a little bit further, what you'll see is about 6 or 7% dropped out of that very satisfied category into somewhat satisfied, and then somewhat satisfied to dissatisfied, about another 12% jumped to that group to the very dissatisfied. We didn't really have too many very dissatisfied, so it seems like in the midst of all of this, whether attributable to having to be limited to just your cart or to that increase that we all know is frankly unavoidable and monthly hauling fees, I think it's very easy to see that it had an impact on their opinion of garbage collection. I think another interesting thing, and I really love my conversations with Marty, he pointed out that it was probably a really good thing that we saw some kind of impact from the program, again, giving validity to the survey results. If nothing happened, we might question that. Did we make people really happy? Did we make them really mad? Either way, you can see that there was a change in the survey results. Moving along, this is the same questioning, it's just other services, and so you're not really seeing anything fall out of the margin of error here. And so something that I believe we printed this out last time, what's your opinion of the tax division in the city auditor's office? This is a big one. It says 52%. Again, take that with a grain of salt because 41% had no opinion. They neither said it was good or bad, perhaps they just didn't know. And so it doesn't mean that that 41% is upset with the auditor's office, it just means that they frankly have no idea. All right, moving along to city leadership and the marks that we got. My apologies, let me catch up on this slide back. All right. So this breaks down satisfaction of city officials in different areas. Overall, and I think something that is a testament to the work that's been going on, especially in the last decade or so, improving Whitehall as a place to live. Similar, but not exact to that first question that we asked, is it excellent or above average? Is it improving? Are we making marks in the right direction? So you do see 77% of people agreeing with that. This is another one where that very satisfied category was strikingly different online versus over the phone. So over the phone, you saw 46% of people fall into that category, quite a bit higher than that 36%. And the online drawing that down, 16%. And so we kind of found that online really did become a bit more negative when it came to the opinion of city officials. Keeping residents informed of improving, of issues involving Whitehall, 66%. It is up 2%, but again, that's within the margin of error from the last survey. I think that really just indicates ongoing need for communication with residents. Planning for the future, you see 63%, but again, thank you, Marty, for including the call-outs. 22% had no opinion, so it could be that perhaps they're just not engaged at the level to understand, are we appropriately planning for the future? And going on, similarly, strengthening the city economy, 63%. addressing the concerns of residents, 56%, again with almost 20% having no opinion. Managing the city's finances, very similar to the question that I showed you with the opinions of the tax division and the auditor's office. A lot of people had no opinion, nearly 40%. So potentially an opportunity for more engagement on the budget process and how our financials have been improving. Contacting the city, our next major category. This one we really like to use internally. And so we do have this broken down for us on the next slide by department. So who called us? We see that about 30% say that they called us in the last year to raise an issue, ask for information, things like that. And that's not strikingly different than the past. It is about 6% less than in 2020. So just above that margin of error, so maybe we weren't contacted as much, but it's still relatively close. Who did you contact? Nope, sorry guys. There we go. So who did you contact? Service, so that probably makes sense, right? So we're getting most of the calls related to things like garbage, snow, leaf removal, that's a lot of phone calls. Followed closely by police, which frankly makes a lot of sense as well. None of this, again, is strikingly different. But then, of course, what are we actually concerned about? Were you satisfied with your experience? So most residents, 65% said they were satisfied, 34% said that they were not. They fall into either that somewhat satisfied or very dissatisfied category. And I think that this is always good to remember too, sometimes we do give out some bad news, whether it be related to something like code compliance, explaining a tax bill, trying to explain why you can't approve a fence or a garage permit, something along those natures, sometimes some really bad news. And so it's always good to remember too that it's not always clear when people answer this whether or not it's good, it's bad news or bad service. So were you treated rudely, things of that nature. And so they're not included here, but we do ask them if they were dissatisfied, what sparked that dissatisfaction, and that's something that we share internally with our department heads to try and make improvements. All right, so moving on to the next big bucket, communication. That's what you're all most interested in, right? That's just me. Okay. We like to ask, what is your most common source of information? We know kind of worldwide, social media is where it's at, and that more people are obviously going to digital platforms. But we also know that Whitehall isn't necessarily your typical community, and that you're going to have this dichotomy between people who are really going to online sources and people who still like to get the paper newspaper. And so trying to make sure that we're meeting people where they're at. So this information is really helpful to us. Facebook continues to be the leading source, but you'll see that it has dropped 10 percentage points, so a significant amount since the last survey. The City E-News update on the other side of that gained about 11 percentage points. And so we're going to continue to focus on those outlets for sure. City website didn't change at all. Interestingly enough, somebody thought that This Week Whitehall was still going. Obviously that has not, what has it been, a couple months? Yeah, okay. Maybe there's somehow. The resident guide making its way in there. So really making sure that we do continue to be present and up to date on all of those platforms. Moving on to priorities. So before I get into the specific priorities pointed out here, I do want to mention that if it does not have a comparison to a previous survey, so the parentheses under the box, that means that question wasn't previously asked. So there's no data to compare it to. So when you're seeing the negatives and percentage points, so like that -9% on affordable housing, the translation is not like, oh wow, a lot less people care about affordable housing. It's no, we gave you one more option. So naturally some people's percentage points or responses rather are going to go to a different category. That said, affordable and workforce housing and providing residents with home improvement grants rose to the top. That second one, the providing residents with home improvement grants, was a new question and was something we were quite curious about based on calls and interest that we get about the program. Also recognizing the current economical situation, high inflation, very weird job market, and the like. You might see the desire for things like that to rise to the top of our priority list. 20% not to be ignored, or almost 20% housing for senior citizens and empty nesters. and everything else kind of falling into a lower category. But yes, same question, different set of programs. So what are your perceptions of these as priorities? And these were a little different, not so development focused. But these really came out of a request from the mayor's office to ask about how is this current economic situation hitting you and your family. And so we really wanted to know if we were able to offer some kind of assistance, what would be of most interest to the residents. Climbing to the top, programs to assist residents when inflation is high. They pretty much answered our question for us. Adding programs that address food insecurity, being at nearly a fifth. Increasing parks and recreation program for all ages, so across the board there. And some other things falling in. All right, development.
Joanna, do you have a question?
Yeah.
Yes.
What was, can you go back one slide
Of course.
first? I'm really making you work. I'm sorry.
It's fine. This one or the next one?
The next one.
Yeah.
What's the difference between, maybe it's just because I can't really read it.
Yeah.
This says 16% increasing rec programming for all ages and then 7% adding rec programming. What's the difference?
I think the difference being making sure that the representative of all age categories and adding them generally
Okay.
is how that came out.
Thank you.
All right, moving on to development. This is a question we've been asking now for quite a few years, trying to understand where residents lie in terms of their perception of the city's, frankly, more recent efforts to acquire blighted properties and reuse that. So Woodcliff being a great example, Norton Crossing being a great example. How are people feeling about that? 51% favor it, 5 opposed. So this is another good one where you could have pulled out that not sure category because they either don't care, they don't know, it's not at the top of their priority list to be thinking about. So you do see still about half the community having a favorable position about that. This is another one where you knew, interestingly, because frankly online was a little bit more negative about some of the city's actions. In this case, it was actually the opposite. So the phone survey, 46% were in favor of it, the online 62%. There was also a notable difference, and thank you again, Marty, for pulling these out, a notable difference racially in how people responded. So we saw 43% of African Americans agreeing and favoring that, and 62% of Caucasian residents agreeing with it. So why, if you were in favor of that strategy, did you agree with it? I'm so sorry, let me catch back up in my notes. And so these were kind of open-ended questions, and we do see Marty again indicating for us how does that compare. Really, people saw since the 2020 survey that they think that it will make help keep crime down and make the community safer. That being the thing that rose the most. Improving the city's reputation on the flip side of that went down significantly, so 14 percentage points since the last survey. So people were less concerned with that as a reason to do it. What was your most common reason for opposing it? So if you were looking back at that chart, here's that 5% category of those that had an opinion, you opposed it. Why did you oppose it? Oh. I'm missing a slide. I'm so sorry. The next slide, I do not have that noted. But as Marty did note for us, it did decrease 11% since 2020. I'll make sure to follow that up with the indication of why. So sorry. All right, Parks and Recreation Programming. So again, this is one where we asked them about priorities and options. And again, all of these had been asked previously, so you can kind of reliably look at the percentage points. Youth sports, which makes sense, right, with the launching of the new softball, t-ball, and soccer programs for Parks and Recreation. That kind of is on people's minds, and so that did raise a significant amount. Life skills, that's actually still pretty significant, of 9%, and that would make sense again in terms of high inflation. Maybe you need a budgeting class, maybe you need household parenting classes, things of that nature. And then the job skills as well, kind of leaning in that direction as well. Okay. All right, so sorry guys, I know I'm jumping around. It's the mouse, not me, I swear. All right. So we did ask asked a couple sets of new questions, and one of them, again, out of the mayor's office, wanting to know about barriers to employment. So recognizing that oddly in the economy, employment is low in a lot of ways, but it doesn't necessarily mean that people are fully employed, and that they are at the level they would like to be. So we did ask, do you feel that over the past year, have you been unemployed or underemployed, being that category of, well, I can't get the job I want, or I don't have the skills to get the job that I want. And so we did see, interestingly, a large portion compared to kind of some of these cross-sectionals, you know, compared to the county and otherwise, 6% unemployed, and then I think the more interesting part, the 17% unemployed, or underemployed, I'm so sorry. So we then grouped those categories together for those who were underemployed or unemployed. Actually, what was that main barrier for you getting that employment that you were seeking? Cost of education and training was there, not having required certificates, childcare instability being the top. I think what's really notable here is that there could be strategies, for instance, attracting businesses in line with Discover that help people build this kind of financial stability, and then also ability to go and get a low-cost education, higher education, and so that's something for us to take away from this as well. And then this is the same question continuing on, that people weren't as concerned with English skills and criminal records, physical limitations and handicaps were still there as well. Diversity and inclusion, so Marty did mention, and I'm gonna go through these a little bit quicker, but just pull out some highlights. We do have this from the 2020 and the 2022 survey. We haven't done them previously, but out of the pandemic and everything that happened surrounding the murder of George Floyd, we certainly wanted to ask some more questions, both about diversity and inclusion and the economy generally. And so something that I think is really interesting to see, and I think is a great thing, is that 91% of residents agree Whitehall is a diverse community, and that it's important for the people of Whitehall and the local government, that's us, to focus on increasing and creating a diverse, inclusive, and fair city. And so 89% agree with that. I think it's hard to get 89% of people to agree to anything, and so I think that's something like marching orders for us to take and keep that moving forward. Again, I'm going to go through these a little bit quicker. We do have that data that kind of shows us who feels that they're welcome, and you fit into these various categories of things that have been discriminated against historically and still currently. How do you feel as it relates to that? And then Marty again here did pull out, I'm sorry, it's like right in that curve there, the comparison between how different people answer this question. But Whitehall is welcoming to people of all races and ethnicities. I think that's a really great call out. You see that 90% of African Americans in the community believe that, as well as 85% of Caucasian people. And again, these are a repeat from 2020, but how does your perception of being treated fairly by different entities, whether that be local law enforcement, your neighbors, so people around you, your local government? And so here, it does get a little bit less favorable, but still really great numbers than kind of that overall 50,000-foot view. And so that's really great. I love seeing that 80% of people think that they're treated fairly by local law enforcement. Again, though, always room for improvement. So then we follow that up with a question of how could we potentially make this a more welcoming and inclusive community. And you're not really seeing too much of a change in the way people responded, hosting festivals and inclusive events, encouraging people to treat people the same, and things really fall off after that. All right, so I do believe that I'm going to invite Marty back up to do a summary for us.
So what have we learned? As a place to live for out of 10 Whitehall residents, consider the city either excellent or above average, so that's up from 2020. And then once again, crime and drugs are the most common concerns among residents, and that's followed by worn out infrastructure involving sewers and streets and a lack of affordable housing. Yet despite this, satisfaction is high with basic city services, especially those involving the police, fire, and EMS, and those folks are gone. They should have been here to see this. Satisfaction also is high with the performance of city officials, you, who residents believe are improving Whitehall as a place to live and providing information on important issues affecting Whitehall. Here, little has changed over the past 2 years. Among the minority of residents who contacted the city office, 2 out of 3 were satisfied with the experience, again, up from 2020. With that question, though, you know, there's always an unsatisfied portion of the pie. And the problem with that portion of the pie, you can't tell if it's bad service or bad news. Pressing on. Though Facebook, or bring that is Meta, continues to be the most common source of news and information about Whitehall, the city's e-news update has become more popular.
Real quick, Megan, who's in charge of that again?
Predictably, the appeal of digital content continues to grow. That's one of those things where if you didn't see that in the survey results, you'd wonder how reliable they are. Among 9 potential community initiatives, the 2 most popular involve affordable workforce housing and home improvement grants. The former topped the list in 2020. The latter is a recent addition, so that accounts for some juggling of place. And then among 6 additional potential priorities, the most popular by far deals with programs to assist residents when inflation is high. Hardly surprising given when the survey was done. And that's another sort of indication of it. If you didn't see that, you'd wonder about the results. Support for the city's approach to redevelopment involving blighted and nuisance properties continues to hover at around 50%. Among 5 programming options offered through the city's Parks and Rec Department, interest is strongest in youth sports. That said, compared to 2 years ago, interest in life and job skills has increased significantly. One would argue that was a result of struggling economy. Then, over the past year, roughly 1 resident in 4 was either underemployed or unemployed. Those most affected include African Americans, renters, and the poorly educated. Not surprising. Moreover, the most common barriers to finding a job involve the cost of additional training or education in the absence of a required certificate. Something someone might get at Columbus State, for example. And then on the diversity inclusion front, once again, residents agree that Whitehall is a diverse community. And the cities I mentioned earlier, more residents here think their community is diverse than in either Dublin or in New Albany. You're probably not surprised. Residents also agree that Whitehall is a welcoming community, but slightly less so relative to 2020. Most residents agree that local law enforcement, neighbors, and local government will treat them and people like them fairly. It may also be true that residents of Whitehall are less inclined to discuss diversity and fairness than they were 2 years ago. When I saw those results, they jumped out a little bit at me because 2 years ago, this may have been a hotter topic, and I think now it's become maybe more of a mainstream topic. And what that may mean is people are talking about it less to their friends and neighbors. Once again, the most common suggestions for promoting diversity and inclusion involve festivals and events. So this is just interesting to me. In every city we ask this, that is always the #1 response, festivals and events. And then just returning to where I began, the decision to include a second method of data collection for this survey has had several consequences. It expanded the sampling frame, which enabled the interviewing staff to complete and exceed the targeted number of interviews. 2 years ago, we weren't convinced on the phone we could reach 300 now, with this online method added, we have less trouble. And it enfranchised at least some residents who would never agree to be interviewed by phone, but found an online version more acceptable. And it also demonstrated that the two means of data collection do not always produce the same results, which makes comparing the findings from the current survey to previous surveys more challenging and potentially less definitive, because what you want to ask is, well, which results are more representative? And my take on this is that what matters less often is the absolute value of the number. Is it 80 or 83? What matters most over time is change. So regardless of what the number is, higher or lower, moving forward, that's what tells you if you're making progress. And then finally, whether the net of these differences is positive or negative, it is likely that multiple methods of data collection is a shift in procedure that is here to stay. And the implication of that is, should you choose to do another survey in 2 years, then you'll need to think about is the time in 2022 to start at the baseline. But that's the baseline because we want to compare fairly, same method to same method.
You know, we just covered a lot. What other questions do you have?
Are we going to get a copy of the entire report?
Yes, so this will be made available online. I'd be happy to email all the council members with it as well.
So if you don't have a copy, please load it in PowerPoint and click through it, and it sings and dances. My staff worked really hard.
It was really a shame that we couldn't get it to go out there.
So there's a lot of animation that will make it easier to go through. And I'll just tell my staff that you did it.
So it will be available online then
Yes,
on the
yes,
city's
and I'll send it
website?
around tomorrow as well.
Does it have the comparable data between the other cities?
This version does not, but I believe the 2020 version did.
We did, well, for 2020, we just did the DEI comparisons. But even if you go on my website, you can see all the data. Their PowerPoints with permission is, well, it's all public information anyway, so you can go and look at, see what their numbers are. Lots of different questions, but lots of similar questions, as you might expect. They, however, you with this survey are in the vanguard of the multiple methods. They're sort of Stone Age, one method of phone.
I'd like to make a comment. There's something about data that kind of dispels a lot of the opinions or information that, you know, people are give without good information. And 4 out of 10 either got an excellent or an above average in Whitehall is a good place to live. And that's encouraging. That's very encouraging. We're satisfied with the performance of city officials, providing Whitehall and providing information, which shows that we are informing the residents. And to me, that's good news. So overall, the information is really good, kind of dispels some of the mistruths that you hear sometimes, and I love data and facts. So thank you very much.
You're welcome.
Mr. Saperstein, I thank you for coming in and giving the presentation. I wanted to mention that I appreciate your love of analyzation as someone that likes to analyze myself. But I did have a question, if I may. You talk about how people might ask questions in a different way if they're speaking with them on the phone as opposed to answering questions online, and you characterize that as positive or negative. But in my viewpoint, I would think that, let's say right here, right now, you and I speaking together, I would be more polite and thoughtful and don't want to say anything which might offend you or give you problems. But online, I would think that would give me more of an opportunity to be honest, not necessarily negative. And so wouldn't that be a little more proper characterization?
When you look at the data, what you see is that online data is almost always more negative. So polite or not polite, it's really a positive-negative distinction, and part of that is a function of the interviewer.
Well, wouldn't that come from people just simply being honest? You might not like the results of it, but it could very well be them simply being honest, not negative.
Well, if people in both groups were being honest, then the method wouldn't necessarily matter. They should be equally honest on the phone as they are online. But the flying the ointment is the method. The flying the ointment is that people on the phone tend to be more polite, which translates into more positive. A difference, for example, not necessarily being from negative to positive, but being from positive to, I don't really have an opinion on that.
And that's where we saw the most variation, is in the no opinion category online. And that's kind of where the differences went. So, for instance, I think one of the call-ups showed, online had a positive of 36 and in-person had 50. So it doesn't mean that those people have an opinion, don't have an opinion in person. They were just more willing to answer and weren't given the no opinion category in front of them. They didn't ask, are we in the right direction, wrong direction, no opinion. They simply asked the question, do you think the city's on the right track? And so you would have to self-generate the idea, no opinion, whereas online, it's just there for you. So you get 3 categories instead of open-ended. And so that's where a lot of the differentiation comes in. Is that correct?
Yeah.
That's fine. I just feel that when people are polite, they're not necessarily truthful. And not necessarily all the time, but that tends to be something when people are being nice and polite, that they're not necessarily honest.
That may be in situations where the polite response is not obvious. But here, you're talking to someone, you figure they're related to the city in some way, because we say who's sponsoring the survey. So there's a tendency not to say very positive, but to say somewhat positive, as opposed to either negative or don't know. And we see this in the data just repeatedly, absolutely repeatedly.
But just to be clear, I mean, the data does not suggest that people who took the phone survey are being dishonest. Correct?
No, it doesn't. But what it says is that, I mean, I would argue sort of the opposite, that the phone has less of an impact towards the positive than online has towards the negative. Because people can be brutal online with no consequence.
Well, we see that all the time.
We see
I mean,
that
it's all the time.
And the not sure category is not necessarily looked at as a negative.
Right.
I would
Yeah,
offer
that's
that
not
they're
negative.
probably more positive than negative.
But what it does do,
Because if they were negative, they wouldn't be not sure.
absolutely, but what it does do is it tends to pull off some of the weakly positive.
Sure.
You don't really have a thing. So on the phone, you go, somewhat positive. Online, you'll go, don't know. Because it's right there.
I think too, back to the point of setting the new baseline, if that were the case, if people were being extremely more positive online, we're gonna have a new baseline moving forward. And so to Marty's point here, the absolute value of these numbers doesn't necessarily mean as much as the trend lines do over time. And so we'll be able to establish that new trend line and see how we're doing either positively or negatively with both biases controlled for.
I mean, ultimately, if there are biases in the data collection that can't be eliminated, you at least want to repeat them. As odd as that may sound. I mean, you want to keep the game the same and have the responses be different. So I argued for years that we would never do a mixed method survey because people are going to answer differently. But we are at the point now where it is almost impossible in a community the size of New Albany and Whitehall to do a sample large enough to be meaningful. and it gets increasingly expensive. And that just goes to labor. I mean, it's no mystery. I mean, there are some surveys we have to call 70 numbers or 80 numbers to get an interview.
How many,
And in a small
how
community.
many
we have
respondents were there last year compared to this year?
I think it's closer to 350, is that
We
correct?
did, our charge has always been to do 350, so it was relatively easy in the first survey, but it got increasingly difficult. And last year, I think we just squeaked under. I remember pacing back and forth in my office, I'm thinking, man, we got like 5 more interviews to do. We just squeaked out. But this year, I knew going in we'd have a problem when we talked about it earlier. I raised that gingerly early on in the process.
If I may as well, and I know we went back and forth as to whether we were gonna have to do the online survey as well. As a polling expert with decades of experience, I know that you've always favored the phone survey. And part of what you do is a systematic sampling to make sure that it's a representative sample. Part of the problem with online sampling, and the reason we don't carte blanche invite the community, is because of selection bias. People self-select in, is that correct?
Yeah, people self-select into everything, but, I mean, because when you call them up on the phone, they have to agree to do it. But at least there's a nudge on the phone that's stronger than the nudge online. So you really have to be interested.
If they got the invitation to go online, would it then follow that it might be because they had a more extreme opinion one way or the
Yeah,
other?
it could.
So they may be more biased towards the negative innately, because they had
Yeah.
something negative to say.
Yeah.
I just think that creates this notion among the community that if you go online, you're negative. And I don't necessarily agree with that.
Do you mean generally or in the
Well,
survey
just
response?
in talking about this,
Yeah.
you know, the politeness, the online, et cetera, and focusing that people online are negative, I just think it makes it sound as though those folks that filled out the survey online are just simply doing it because they were negative about the city, rather than because that was easy and they were being honest.
But that is a selection bias, and that is something that sampling does attempt to counteract. So you want to hear from everybody, really opinionated, not so opinionated across the board. And I think everybody knows that online presence tends to have a more opinionated. If you're not going online, you might be going about other things in your day because you don't have somebody positive or negative to say. But something as a social media specialist with over a decade in this area, I can tell you that almost always somebody goes online and they're commenting on a Facebook, it's not going to be a well done city. Just like they don't come to city council that often to tell you, well done everybody, you do a great job. I'm probably not going to come here if I got to run Timmy to soccer practice, because I'm going to go about my day. The same is true online and on social media, and it's something that we see across the board, and not just in our community, that's just across the board.
There's one other issue with online surveys. So with the telephone survey, you ask a question, someone answers it, you're hoping they're thoughtful. But when you look at the data, which you get back from online surveys, you'll have people just clicking 1, 1, 1, 1, 1, 1, 1, 1, 1 across all the questions.
And would you characterize that as honesty?
No, yeah, right. I characterize that as laziness. Or you look at the responses to an open.
Kroger survey.
And responses to an open-ended question, and you see someone has held their finger down on the A key. So we have to look for that, and, you know, you think, oh, we have enough interviews, and then you delete, you know, some number of them, and I'm sure we don't catch all of them, in the same way that there are people on the phone who lie. But here's sort of the thing about it, is that all of these sorts of issues have been around forever, and you would think that from survey to survey, the numbers would just vary dramatically. And I am always amazed, I always hold my breath when we finally have data produced. I can't believe how close the data are from year to year. There's a couple of percentage points change. In fact, with the trash collection, I called Megan up and I said, something's wrong with this. Why is trash collection so different? is there a reason or what? And there was
Yeah,
a
those
reason.
lids have to be shut, that's the reason.
A good example also is in Dublin, people were very unhappy with parking in what they call historic Dublin. And then this survey, the numbers spiked. And I had to call, oh no, that one I knew, that one, and I thought, yeah, you know why it spiked? They built a huge parking garage, and people park there now. So for me, and then Powell had an issue where city council gave a developer a large amount of money for some issue that came up, and boy, city council ratings spiked in the wrong direction there, because people didn't like that. So one of the things I look for are differences from the previous survey, because most of the time, the numbers are very similar, and then you hope you can find an explanation for it, because that's what validates the process for me. And the thing that's surprising is how sensitive the process is. You know, even small changes that may not affect everyone. You'll see spikes in the data.
Well, so maybe if I could maybe attempt to wrap it up. I mean, I think what city council will hear is that, you know, engaging with Saperstein and Associates, we are doing everything we can to have a truly representative sample of our community, giving us feedback that is objective to how they feel and what they feel our priorities should be and things we should be concerned about. And, you know, this is just another way that, you know, we are working to engage our residents to make sure that we're hearing from all of them. So I really appreciate Marty and Megan's work on this very much.
Thank you.
I just want to say that this is very interesting to me in the fact that, as Marty said, there were no really outliers except for maybe the trash, and we found, you know, there's a reason for that. Just knowing also some of those questions that I really wanted to have asked regarding that I knew the pandemic would change some things such as park and rec programming. What can the city do to help people more? And I know a lot of that has to do with inflation and the economy. So I don't know if those questions will be that important in 6 to 8 years. Who knows? But it's good that we got that snapshot right now about how people are feeling, and that 1 in 4 of those who answered were either unemployed or underemployed. I mean, that's a big deal. And so what can we do to help them? I mean, that's, to me, that was one of the biggest things that came out of this regarding our community. Yeah. So thank you.
You're welcome.
Thank you both.
Thank you.
Thanks, Megan.
Yeah.
Are you okay, Julie? You ready? Okay, that brings us to first opportunity for poll public. Is there anybody that wishes to come forward and share? On to standing committees. Administration and Financial Management did meet last Tuesday, and our minutes are on file. And there's not much happening as far as legislation, but we will meet again next Tuesday sometime after 6:30 right here. Community and Elder Advocacy, Chairperson Dixon.
Thank you, President Pro Tem Bailey. Community and Elder Advocacy met last week. Our minutes are on file. There is no legislation on the agenda, and we will meet next week after 6:30.
All right. Community Standards and Enforcement, Chairperson Smith.
Thank you, President Pro Tem Bailey. Community Standards Enforcement also met last week. Our minutes are on file. We have Ordinance 2 and 3, 2023 on the agenda for tonight for passage on first reading, and we will meet again next week.
Economic Development, Chairperson Cantor.
Thank you, Mr. President Pro Temp. We met 2 weeks ago. Economic Development met last week, I'm sorry. Minutes are on file. We'll meet again next week after 6:30.
Infrastructure Maintenance and Services, Chairperson Coniston.
Thank you, President Pro Tem. Infrastructure Maintenance and Services also met last week. Our minutes are on file, and we'll meet again next week.
All right. Public Safety, Chairperson Elmore.
Thank you, President Pro Tem. Public Safety met last week. Minutes are on file. We have resolutions today. We will meet again next week. Thank you.
Thank you. Parks and Recreation, Chairperson Hack.
Thank you, President Pro Tem. Parks and Recreation met last Tuesday. Our minutes are on file. We have no legislation on tonight's agenda, and we will meet next Tuesday sometime after 6:30.
Very well. Next is officials' reports, and we'll start off with Mayor Maggard.
First of all, I would like to say that I always enjoy having our Employees of the Year come to council and be recognized. For those employees who, all of our employees do a good job, but for those employees to be singled out, it tickles me to death, because there's nothing like someone being appreciated for the hard work and the job that they do and the love of doing good for the city and also serving our citizens. Regarding the city attitude survey, again, I found it very interesting in the 2022 survey that's talking about 9 potential community initiatives, and the responders said basically 74% of them had something to do with housing. Whether it's affordable or workforce housing, or what can the city do to help people with their housing, and senior housing, and empty nester housing. So 74% of our citizens are interested in housing. And I think that's very interesting, especially for the future, about how we can, structure housing initiatives and different types of housing around what citizens said they wanted. So that's a big deal, 74%. Thank you.
Very good. That brings us to City Administrator, Mr. Woodruff.
Thank you, Mr. Bailey. I have no official report this evening. I too want to congratulate all of the Employees of the Year, specifically Laura again and Austin again, who just do a fantastic job day in and day out, as well as Officer Showalter and our Firefighter of the Year. I would ask for favorable consideration of Ordinance 02 and 03, 2023. Thank you.
City Attorney, Mr. Bivens.
Thank you, Mr. President, Pro Tem, members of council, and everyone that's here. Just general comments of gratitude and thanks for the Martin Luther King celebration breakfast that we had yesterday. I have to start off by saying I'm a boxing fan. The boxer of my generation was Mike Tyson, and one of his quotes, he said, "Everybody has a plan until they get hit." But before him, Muhammad Ali said that service to others is the rent that you pay for your room in heaven. And yesterday, I was analyzing why I was just so emotional as it related to this Martin Luther King breakfast. And it wasn't the submissions of the kids, which were just phenomenal, but it was more or less in the spirit of what Martin Luther King said in the speech, which was from Give Us the Ballot. One of the lines that he said, and he went in on Democrats and Republicans and called them both lukewarm, but he had a line in there that said that they speak with the high blood pressure of words, but anemic in their deeds. And yesterday, we did not fall short, and we were not anemic in our deeds yesterday as a city and as a community. And I wanted to thank every single donor that made a donation to make this probably, no, I won't even hedge, make this the best scholarship awards presentation that I believe Whitehall has seen in a long time. And here's why. Initially, this scholarship was just supposed to be 2 scholarships of at least $500. Well, we just put out the clarion call to members of the community, and that money went from 2 $500 scholarships to us raising in a 30-day span, based on the generosity of the donors, $4,200 that went to give scholarships to all of those students. what made me so emotional, and I had to analyze it yesterday, and I even analyzed it this morning, was I always look at the word love as a verb. It's normally an action item, and you got to show me that you love me. You got to do something. But yesterday I experienced Whitehall more as a noun, and that Whitehall became a place of love. It became a place where not only every segment of the community pulled together in love to do something that was more than themselves. And I believe if any of us can pat ourselves on the back, we gave honor to the legacy of the Dr. Reverend Martin Luther King Jr. and what we did yesterday, and we demonstrated it not just in our words but also in our deeds. And I just want to say congratulations to Whitehall, congratulations to all the donors, and congratulations to our award recipients, Sierra Wooden, Deborah Gebra Hiwat, Jasmine Fisher, and Samantha Jenkins Ramos. They deserve, they all got scholarships of at least $1,000 yesterday, and they're all college bound, and congratulations, it was well deserved. So those are my comments. Thank you.
Thank you, Mike. City Auditor, Mr. Quetzal.
Thank you, Mr. President, members of council. I have no official report tonight, but I do ask for your favorable consideration on ordinance 4/2023.
Sure. And our treasurer, Mr. Alexander.
Thank you, Mr. President. I have no official report tonight.
All right. There have been no official reports filed in the council office since the last meeting. Under communications and petitions and claims, we have the minutes from the January 5th, 2023 Whitehall Planning Commission meeting. We'll move on to third readings, and there's no legislation this evening, so we'll move on to second readings. Resolution 1/2023, levying special assessments for property maintenance at several locations in the city of Whitehall, Ohio, addresses and parcel numbers as provided within the text of this resolution, certifying such costs to the Franklin County Auditor to be assessed against such property and declaring an emergency. Resolution 1/2023 is being read by title only. That is all we have under second reading. So under first reading, we have Ordinance 2/2023, enacting chapters 517.45, distribution of tobacco products without a license, and 517.46, illegal distribution of tobacco products of the city's codified ordinances, Exhibit A.
Mr. President Pro Temp, I'd like to introduce ordinance 002/2023 and move for the suspension of all rules.
Second.
I have a motion by Smith and a second by Cantor for introduction and suspension of the rules on ordinance 2/2023. Is there any discussion? Mrs. Aug, would you please call the roll?
Cantor,
Yes.
Heck,
Yes.
Smith,
Yes.
Bailey,
Yes.
Dixon,
Yes.
Elmore,
Yes.
Coniston.
Yes.
The rules have been suspended on ordinance 2/2023.
Mr. President Pro Temp, I move for adoption.
Second.
I have a motion by Smith, a second by Cantor for the adoption of ordinance 2/2023. Mrs. Aug, would you please call the roll?
Cantor,
Yes.
Heck,
Yes.
Smith,
Yes.
Bailey,
Yes.
Dixon,
No.
Elmore,
Yes.
Coniston.
Yes.
Ordinance 2/2023 has been adopted. Ordinance 3/2023, an ordinance adopting Chapter 741 of the Whitehall Codified Ordinances to establish the tobacco products sales licensing program.
Mr. President Pro Temp, I'd like to introduce ordinance 3/2023 and move for the suspension of all rules.
Second.
I have a motion by Smith and a second by Dixon to introduce and suspend the rules on ordinance 3/2023. Is there any discussion? Ms. Aug, would you please call the roll?
Cantor,
Yes.
Heck,
Yes.
Smith,
Yes.
Bailey,
Yes.
Dixon,
Yes.
Elmore,
Yes.
Coniston.
Yes.
The rules have been suspended on ordinance 3, 2023.
Mr. President Pro Temp, I'd like to move for adoption.
Second.
I have a motion by Smith and a
Oh,
second.
I'm sorry.
Second.
I guess we're even. We're even.
I have a motion by Smith and a couple of seconds by Dixon.
Touche.
To adopt ordinance 3, 2023. Ms. Aug, would you please call the roll?
Cantor,
Yes.
Heck,
Yes.
Smith,
Yes.
Bailey,
Yes.
Dixon,
No.
Elmore,
Yes.
Coniston.
Yes.
Ordinance 3, 2023 has been adopted. Ordinance 4, 2023, approving and making a supplemental appropriation in the amount of $1,212,000 from unappropriated monies in the capital improvement /budget fund 311 to the capital improvement expense account 311.000.54,000 and declaring an emergency.
Mr. President Pro Temp, I'd like to introduce ordinance number 4, 2023, and move for the suspension of the rules, please.
Second?
I have a motion by Cantor and a second by Coniston for introduction and suspension of the rules on ordinance 4, 2023. Is there any discussion? Ms. Aug, would you please call the roll?
Cantor,
Yes.
Heck,
Yes.
Smith,
Yes.
Bailey,
Yes.
Dixon,
Yes.
Elmore,
Yes.
Coniston.
Yes.
Rules have been suspended on ordinance 4, 2023.
Thank you, Mr. President Pro Temp. Move for the adoption, please.
Second?
I have a motion by Cantor, a second by Coniston to adopt ordinance 4, 2023. Ms. Aug, would you please?
Mr. President Pro Temp, if I could.
Sure.
Just wanted to comment on this ordinance for the record, because it is a first reading and we're asking for it to be passed with a pretty large sum of money. At the end of last year, our private development partner for the Woodcliff redevelopment made their required portion payment for the portion of the infrastructure that is currently being installed up at Woodcliff. Council last year allowed for the transfer of those funds from the general fund to the 311 to the capital improvement fund. This ordinance would appropriate it from the fund to the account so that the city can put in the necessary purchase orders to allow for payment to the contractor in a timely fashion. Hence why we're asking for it on a first reading. So I just wanted to make sure that people not only here but at home understood what this money was from, where it was going, and what it was being used for. Thank you.
And I also want to thank you for sending us an email explaining all that too. Ms. Aug, would you please call the roll?
Cantor,
Yes.
Heck,
Yes.
Smith,
Yes.
Bailey,
Yes.
Dixon,
Yes.
Elmore,
Yes.
Coniston.
Yes.
Ordinance 4, 2023 has been adopted. This is our second opportunity, I believe, for full public. Anybody wishing to come forward, you do so. State your name and address for the record.
Dustin Holfinger, shall I say my home address? 3098 East High Street, Springfield, Ohio, unfortunately. Seems kind of weird saying that today here. I just wanted to thank you all, not only for the conversation, the robust conversation around the tobacco retail license, but also the work that you all put in with your constituents, speaking out and reaching out to them and garnering their interest and their thoughts and opinions on this policy, and your protection of your future of the city of Whitehall. By instituting this type of policy in your city, you have taken a stand and shown that you are not interested in big tobacco taking hold of your community and your children. We've all discussed our history with tobacco, my history with tobacco, some people on the council's history with tobacco. And this is obviously very, very important to you all. It's very important to Franklin County Public Health Department, and obviously very important to the American Heart Association. So I would just like to say thank you very much for all of your support and all of your time on that ordinance today.
All right, thank you. Community Date Board.
When's Easter?
April 1st.
Is it really?
Actually, every day.
Is it really?
Well, the Easter egg hunt.
Oh.
Yeah, come on,
So,
get with it.
so stuffing the eggs is 4 days before that, guys.
Yeah.
Correct. I'll give the exact dates next time.
So we will move on to Mrs. Cantor and poll
Oh,
council.
I'm first again, that's right. I'd like to thank everybody for coming, everybody that's watching. Megan, that was a really good presentation, and I look forward for you to send me in the email so I can actually see, because if you sat right here, I mean, I don't know if everybody can see here, but to me, there's wrinkles in this screen.
What he's saying, your presentation needs ironed out.
Yeah, there you go. Yeah, thanks. But it was really good.
Ray Ogden would be proud.
Oh, he would, yeah. Oh, that'll be on there.
That's a Ray Ogden.
That'll be on social media, and that's a positive. So, no, you were good. That was a good one. That was a good one. I'll look forward to looking at that too. And Dustin, I've known you for many years. I want to thank you for your presentation last week. Unfortunately, I was ill the first time that you came in a few weeks ago, but I did watch it. And I think, I was with our conversation last week in the hall, and Mr. Woodruff, he'll probably tell you, I was a bug in his ear, even today, so much so. And I'll tell you why I voted yes, is there were 4 items that I was totally displeased with. He came up last week and said, I know who you've talked to, and he said a couple of people here, and before he has said who I've spoken to. And I have the luxury sometime, even though I'm old, to go out and talk to people. Even though I still have 2 teenage daughters, hi kids, Dad loves you. And they're home. But I went out and talked to them, and I've been back out and talking to them again. And there was just a couple that I didn't get to. So, Reader's Digest version, I was upset with 4, and I'll thank Mr. Woodruff and the administration for coming down and meeting me, actually a little bit more than halfway, because they did 3 out of 4, so 75%, and I want to thank them. I'm still hooked on the one that but it is what it is, and we explained it, and I spoke with Mr. Bailey about it also today, and so that's why I voted that way. So that's all I have to say. I want to thank everybody again, and I love you girls. Tell your grandma I said hi. I'm done.
Okay. That brings us to Councilperson Heck.
Thank you, President Pro Tem. Thank you, everybody watching from home and everybody that came in. I want to echo what Attorney Bivens said. The event was phenomenal. I always enjoy that event every year, and I think every year it gets better. So I really appreciate you and Councilwoman Lori putting on, and everybody else that has a hand in it. Thank you, Megan, for the survey results. I too look forward to kind of getting the slideshow and really diving into those. And congratulations to everybody that received, and all the employees that received Employee of the Year this year. And that's all I have.
Councilperson Smith.
Thank you. I echo a lot of what my fellow council members said. Thank you for those watching online and those here in person. Congrats to those employees who received Employee of the Year. I can't imagine standing in front of everybody and it being streamed live to the city, congratulating you on your work, but it means a lot. You're working on behalf of the city. As Councilperson Cantor and Heck said, I'm excited to look into the survey as well. I appreciate the discussion of trends a little bit up and down. It's looking at the whole picture of multiple years. Are we going in the right direction? And I wasn't able to be at the breakfast yesterday, but I know as a high school student receiving scholarships how much of a difference that made in even today as an adult, how much that made an impact on my life. So I think that's really cool that people were able to come together and raise the amounts of those scholarships. That's all I have.
Okay, Councilperson Dixon.
Thank you, President Pro Tem Bailey. As the others have said, I want to thank everyone for joining us here in the council chambers and those at home who tuned in. I thank you, Ms. Myers, for your presentation. It's always remarkable how you remember everything. And I say that as an actor who memorized whole scripts. But I'm always impressed, so thank you for that. Mr. Holfinger, thank you for speaking tonight. And of course, you know, thank you to Ms. Jones, Mr. Hines, Mr. Showalter, and Mr. Stauffer for their amazing work here in the city. Congrats to them for the Employee of the Year. And so terrific to hear how wonderfully Martin Luther King Jr. Breakfast went and the amount of money raised. I think that's terrific. And that's it. Thank you.
All right. Councilperson Elmore.
Thank you, President Pro Tem. I wanted to thank our viewers for taking the time out to stay informed and view and see what's going on in their city. Also, I would like to congratulate all the award recipients for an outstanding job and working to the highest level to achieve Employee of the Year. I'm going to speak about the MLK celebration, and thank you to my co-chair, Attorney Michael Bivens. I will echo your sentiments. I thought this was one of the best ones that we've had. What started out as a day of unity in 2017 and then was halted by COVID in 2020 to be revigorated in 2023 and the outpouring of love for all the people that showed up, the support. To me, it was reconnecting community. And that's what it's really all about, just reconnecting us back to what's important. And that's us appreciating what we bring to the table. Everybody is different, and meeting everybody where they are. And I just appreciate all the hard work, all the support from the administration. Thank you, Mayor, for even making this holiday possible, or giving us the insight. Thank you, Council, for voting it in as a holiday. I want to thank the superintendent, school board members, other city officials, Director of Parks and Rec, Communications, and all the other people that assisted in the success of the MLK program. Again, I will say, and I say it over and over again, one other person, our representative, Latina Humphrey, who comes out and has been supporting ever since she was elected. I will say again, teamwork makes the dream work, and as long as we work together, we can achieve anything that we need to for this city. So thank you again. I look forward to even a bigger and a better celebration, and I want to thank those recipients. I know they will do great things. They are very intelligent, knowledgeable. The information that they put into the information that they submitted to us, the heartfelt and all I think the heart that went into them writing the speeches that they wrote to stay in line with what it was and what it means to give us the ballot was spot on, and I just appreciate everything that was done, and that's all I have to say. Thank you.
Okay, Councilperson Coniston.
Thank you very much. President Pro Tem, I echo everybody's sentiments tonight. I look at these surveys and I think of the surveys that I put out every year to my employees, and I think we all know that one day somebody can think this way and tomorrow somebody can think the other way, and the results can be completely different. So, you know, I'm happy to see that the results have stayed very consistent with the years. That says a lot, it really does. But obviously we show that we have some improvement that can be made also. And that's something that I know that each one of us continues to want to do and continues to make improvements towards. And that's all I have.
Right, well, not much left to say, other than thank you all for coming. I think, you know, every time we get to this point in the year where we recognize the outstanding employees, it's really a reminder of the kind of leadership that's in City Hall and the efforts that are made to not only acquire but retain talent. And as you guys know, we just reviewed salaries and things. So it's really, you know, those folks don't just come in and do a job, they serve the community, and that's the difference. And there's you know, it's not just one person in a department. I think you'll find that a lot of folks that work for the city have that same feeling in their heart But I think it might be time to recognize that maybe we're the city of pride and diversity, and we know how to work with that and work together with it. So together, we stand strong. And with that, I'll take a motion to adjourn.
Motion to adjourn.
Mr. President Pro Tem, may I ask a question real quick?
Got a second?
Do I have to answer it?
Oh, it's a simple.
Can I pass?
It's a simple question.
Sure.
I was curious if the MLK Junior Breakfast was taped. I'd love to see those kids' speeches.
So, we do have a recording of the scholarship presentation itself, but and the kids said thank you and things like that. Their speeches weren't read in that portion of this videotaped.
Okay, thank you.
I'll go again, motion to
Second.
adjourn.
I have a motion by Cantor and a second by Coniston. Elmer, to adjourn. Ms. Aug, would you please call the roll?
Cantor,
Yes.
Heck,
Yes.
Smith,
Yes.
Bailey,
Yes.
Dixon,
Yes.
Elmore,
Yes.
Coniston.
Yes.
We are adjourned.
You said you made speeches.